had a lot to say. Sorry?
Oh,
it's
yeah, it
the
was just
meeting
an
is-
automatic thing saying that the meeting was being recorded. You can proceed.
Okay. At the end of that meeting, it seems to me, if I remember correctly, that 3 or 4 of the commission members had a lot to say about the number of residential units. And I don't see that reflected in the minutes, and I'm not sure it was even put, I'm not sure it was, I'm not sure it was put into the recommendations. I'm
Yes,
very fuzzy on it.
it
But I-
was part of the recommendations to consider more units versus restaurant space.
Okay, so I assume we're going to hear about that in the report back now then. Thank you very much. Okay, so any other business arising from the minutes? Okay, so the new business is the focus of today's meeting. And is there going to be a presentation today?
Yes, I think the applicant and the applicant's agent will have a chance to speak to the changes that they've made since the last time the APC reviewed this file.
Luke, do you want to say something before they do that?
Yes, okay.
Okay,
I will.
okay.
So as you know, at the last Advisory Planning Commission meeting, there were a number of recommendations, some of them, specific and some of them general in terms of looking into various aspects of the development. Those were referred to council. Council considered those, and I don't know if you saw the meeting, but there's some good discussion at the council meeting. And it's important to council that you have a chance to review the changes, which is, it was one of their recommendations from the Advisory Planning Commission in the first place. So the purpose of today's meeting is fairly specific. Council does want you to look at the changes that have been made in response to the recommendations that the APC made in the previous meeting. So I think if you use that as sort of a guidelines or goalposts for today's meeting, I think the meeting will be focused and efficient.
Okay.
And with that, I'd like to just refer to Karsten and give him an opportunity to summarize the changes and maybe the rationale and speak to some of those issues as well. So I'll pass it over to Mr. Jensen. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Luke, and thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I think I'd like to address the question of additional units. Chris and I have had some discussions about this, not just after the APC meeting, but also during the course of development of the design. And basically, to get additional units, one way would be to eliminate the restaurant, and the other way would be to add a third story. The sense that I got of it, and I'm going to ask Chris to add his comments to this. The sense that I got in my conversations with Chris is that adding a third story is not really a viable option because it would increase the cost of the construction by maybe $5 million. And that can't be accommodated in Naked Natural's current business plan. As far as changing the area allocated to restaurant to units, I think I'll ask Chris to discuss or to comment about that one.
Naked Naturals feels strongly. Naked Naturals feels strongly that the restaurant integrating with the store does way more for the project than adding additional residential units. As far as the third story goes, it's the dead parking. The property just isn't big enough to accommodate each residential unit having one parking space, which is essentially blacked out from the overall plan, without having substantially more land to accommodate those parking spots. Both extending them on the second story as well as extending on a third story eats up parking, which is crazy valuable right now for us. It's already a tight site. We're hearing a lot of concern in the community about surrounding parking. To add a greater density to that site, I believe would be a mistake.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody want to add to that or continue the discussion on that issue? Okay, so I think we'll go on and we'll show you the changes that we've made. Now, I don't intend to make a sort of full-blown presentation of the project because I think you can remember a lot of aspects of it from our last presentation, but in this presentation, I will concentrate on the changes that we've made in response to the APC's comments from the first meeting. So Nicholas, could you give us the renderings? Okay, so what we've done here is, can you zoom back a little bit, Nicholas, and show us the entire memorial frontage? Actually, it's blocked. Maybe it's blocked on just on my screen because okay, I'm gonna try to. Okay, well, anyways, as maybe you can see, I can't really. Yeah. So what we did, Nicholas, and maybe you can point to this with your cursor. The two end facades, we pulled back the top top level, and what we did was we created a roof underneath there. So it made more of it. It created greater variegation in the massing of that elevation. It also added additional detailing to that elevation. When we created the roof for the transition from the top to the bottom, we saw the opportunity to carry to do more with the canopy. And so what we did was we carried that canopy really pretty well right around the building, as you'll see as we go around the building. Nicholas, why don't you walk us around the building and we'll see that. So the canopy, it juts out a bit with the facades, and then it cuts back, continues across right there, and creates part of the balcony containment there. And then it continues on the other side the same way. And then when we turn the corner, we've added something here which was not on the original plan. We've continued that canopy all the way around so that it covers the sidewalk along the north elevation of the building. And then we continue it. And it joins with the canopy at the entrance to the store. And that canopy also, as before, acts as part of the balcony for the restaurant above. And if we can just keep going, we'll just go right back to the southeast corner eventually. So the canopy continues right around on the south side as well. Got a building in the way. Okay, now maybe we should just do the same thing, bird's eye. I should mention that there has been some discussion about the color of that new canopy. In earlier versions, we, quite early on in the design process, we looked at black canopies because that is what Naked Naturals has traditionally used. And we instead chose the silver canopies. But I don't think that we are absolutely determined to stick with the silver canopies. And in fact, we have done a study showing black canopies, which we can show you later if you like. The black canopy tends to break up the facade some more, which to some eyes might seem less good and to others might seem better. But right now, the studies that we've got are screenshot studies, so I don't think that they give you as good an idea as these rendered studies, but we can show you those if you like. So I think we can just move fairly quickly here, Nicholas. Now, something I should mention while we're here is that a comment was made about plant materials, more natural materials. So what we've done is we've changed we had maples at the entrance to the store before, and we've changed those to dogwoods, which are local. Also, the plum trees on the other side, those have been changed to dogwoods as well. And I think there's also been some bushes that have been changed to local materials as well. So if we just keep going around. When we get to the other side, I'm going to say a little bit about overhangs and a couple of other things. So now if we go down to the street and we come closer. So now on the lower level, we've got lots and lots of overhangs, and we've also got some overhangs on the upper levels on the two flanking elevations that have been pulled back. The store ceiling height, Andrew mentioned in the last meeting, and I think it was an excellent comment, that the original 12-foot ceiling height just maybe wasn't the most appropriate for a store of this size. We had quite a lot of discussions about this, and we reviewed ceiling heights at a number of, quite a few actually, recent food stores in Victoria and in Vancouver. And as a result, we increased the ceiling height from 12 feet to 16 feet. And we provided an additional 1 foot for structure and services. So we've added about 5 feet to the height. Now, maybe if we can look at it straight on, Nicholas, that additional 5 feet is basically largely hidden by the canopy here, the continuous canopy. So I think that that's been a very good addition. Now, in addition to that, we've increased the height of the windows in between, so they're higher now as well. I think they've gone up to, I think, 12 feet. I think that's about it. You know, those are the changes, but you know, personally, I see these as quite significant changes. But I would like to think that in making these changes, we've strengthened rather than weakened the design. So that's the end of our presentation.
Thank you, Karsten. We have comments from Walter first.
I think these are questions. Are they first?
Questions first.
Yeah, it's a couple, really just two questions. I think I've asked enough questions from the last meeting, and a number of them have been addressed. However, there's two questions I have for one for the applicant and one for the first one is for Luke, through the chair. Well, how's the town doing with the urban planning and around this site? Is there something in place yet? And what is the where is that process with respect to this development?
Sure. Through the chair to Mr. Hoogland. That
Yes.
design is currently underway. We have an urban designer, Cal Shrigley is his name. I'm preparing a few options with regard to the overall site planning, location of the underground ramp, and so on and so forth. So once we have some viable options, then we're going to be going out to the public for consultation around those options as to which they prefer.
I'd like to ask a question connected to that, Luke. Is it your intention that the town square and the underground parking and the parking access to the underground parking and to the underground parking under Naked Naturals all be completed as part of the same construction project?
Well, the underground works make a lot of sense to do at the same time, you know, in terms
Yes.
of like the underground ramps and so on and so forth. So the square and, you know, the top dressing, I guess you could say, for the site, that could conceivably happen in a second phase. But when it comes to constructing underground ramps,
Yes,
you know, we don't want to be tearing up the site twice if we don't have to. So it would
Right.
be our intention to do as much of the underground work as possible in the first phase. Now, there is one caveat to that, and that is that we need to retain parking on the site, you know, through the construction process. So we're going to be looking at ways to, you know, open up maybe some other part of the site as an interim location while the other part gets torn to shreds.
yeah,
And if that necessitates some awkward phasing of underground construction, so be it. You know, we just need to maintain functionality. So ideally, yes, Andrew, absolutely. It would happen
Okay.
at the same time, but circumstances may not align that way.
okay. Thank you.
My second question to that aligns with what Andrew just brought up, and it would be a question to the applicant. What happens if that site, through no fault of the applicant, it's not going to be available for doing the work on the proposed site for Naked Naturals? For instance, if so right now, we're looking at a project, and it's got three fronts to it, and those three fronts, they've really improved. Really like what's happening here. We have an access from a lane, and we have an access from forth. But this application is actually asking for a fourth front, and that's through the underground parking. What happens if that fourth front is not going to be available through no fault of the applicant by means of a political agenda, or it could be a financial one, it could be community pressure, it could be environmental concerns. Really, what we have on the table then is an underground parking that we can't get to, we can't leave. So what is the plan B for the applicant if that site is not going to be made available?
The entire site is dependent on an agreement with the city. The project would have to be scaled back. The size of the building would not be able to happen without the underground as is.
So it's totally, so if I'm asking So what I'm hearing is that you can't do this with what's happening next door.
Not to this scale. The project, originally we were against the underground parking. Through discussions with Luke in the city, we came to a compromise that would allow it to work. As part of that, the project actually grew in size, knowing that we had extra parking. By doing this, it basically gave us an extra 32 stalls, I believe, Kirsten. The underground that allowed us to go bigger. So the project would have to be scaled back.
So in other words, the project would obviously change quite a bit.
Substantially,
That site
yes.
was not available.
Yes,
So the application that's before us
would be shelved.
would be shelved.
It won't meet the
So-
parking requirements as is with 32 parking stalls for the size of the building. It would not meet it, and Naked Naturals would not be comfortable building the size of a site with that little parking.
So I just have the one question for you, but for the applicant and to Chris and to Karsten, what's going to happen here with that underground parking? Usually when we look at an application, we have a sense of what the elevations are. We know that there's going to be variances in the elevations of the building itself. In this particular case, we don't know how deep this project is going to go. And if you look at the northeast corner, if you can take that image that you have right there, Nicholas, and just shift it along Memorial and go towards the stop sign at Fern and Memorial, we're looking at a retaining wall there. And I did some calculations. I was out there a few times, just trying to figure this whole thing out. And there's probably about a 5-foot drop from along Fern Street, and there's probably similar change in elevation from the south side of the property to that stop sign. What happens at that corner for the town of Qualicum Beach totally depends on your entrance into the underground parking. If you have a 12-foot underground parking, perhaps that 5-foot retaining wall would be reduced or not be there at all. Currently, the way it shows on the drawing is that we got a retaining wall, which of course will require a railing to meet codes and code requirements. So I'm unclear on how this is going to work. We've got an application for us, and basically we've got a hole in the side of the north side of the building there into a dirt bank, assuming that there's going to be parking lot underneath there. And we don't know what's going to happen at that stop sign for our demographic in town, in the town of Qualicum Beach. So I guess just follow up on the question is, has that been considered in your application?
Yes.
How that we're going to work that through?
Okay, Walter, maybe I can give you a little bit more background on this. We did look at this quite a bit. We don't know how much structure is going to be required to support the town square. We assume it's going to be quite a bit. We know that with the Naked Naturals building, using the latest cross-laminated timber techniques and that sort of thing, we don't have to have a lot of depth. We don't have to go down very deep in order to get a comfortable amount of, or a comfortable freeboard for the parking, or not freeboard, but height for the parking. So our building doesn't have to go very deep. We assume that the town site is going to have to go fairly deep, because I think there's going to be quite a lot of reinforced concrete beams, that kind of stuff. to support the landscaping above. So we just, this is our best guess at it right here. Our parking lot can go as deep as it needs to go. And we are assuming that we will have, realistic input from the town's design team and engineers by the time that we go to working drawings on this. 5 feet, I'm kind of surprised that you came up with 5 feet on this. I think I came up with about 3.5 feet. But, that's, you're probably more experienced at that than I am. So, if you say 5 feet, 5 feet.
The only thing I did, what I did is I actually learned how to do a little bit of Google stuff on this one. And when I was traveling down Memorial, it shows the elevation as I'm traveling down, and it took me right down to Second, and it shows the difference in elevations as you're traveling it down. So it's not that I've surveyed it at all. It could be 3.5, 4 feet, it could be 5 feet. However, there is a difference in elevation. Mr. Chair, I have a number of comments that I'd like to make on this, and also a suggestion, because as it sits right now, I'm fairly comfortable.
Can we leave the comments and suggestions until after the questions, please?
Yeah, exactly.
Any more questions, Walter?
No, I think I'm pretty well there.
Okay. Maureen, any questions on the presentation?
Yes, I think the unified design, or the coordination of the site has come up. Unified landscape, I think we saw. The one thing that I felt wasn't addressed in the, these architectural details, there's been a good, some nice stuff happening. The one thing I'm not comfortable with, I didn't see addressed, was the scale and design of the residential entries. Can you tell me how you've dealt with our concerns over that?
The south entry has increased in size somewhat.
Can we scroll over there and you point that out? It just looks bigger and massive and less inviting, in my opinion. Because the roof canopy is so far above the entry door there.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you can bring us down to street level a bit, where that person's standing, just what we would see when we're going into that space. Yeah, thank you. Okay.
Okay. So, the entrance is, at various times, the entrance has been directly from the south or directly from the east. And right now, Nicholas, correct me if I'm wrong, but we did end up with the east entry, and I can't really recall the previous presentation we showed you whether that was the east entry.
Yeah, it was on, I'm looking at the previous ones on my other screen here, and it was south on the previous
right
that we were looking at. Yeah, so you've moved it around the corner.
Yeah, we moved it around the corner, and when we moved it around the corner, it gave us the opportunity to create a larger entry vestibule there. And so the footprint is larger when you come inside. And of course, moving the canopies around or adding the canopies on that side, we felt gave more definition to that entry. And let's see, I'm trying to remember whether the massing above the entrance got larger as well.
It is. It's considerably larger.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at the two together, and it's that canopy's lifted up quite a bit. Now, maybe Andrew can clarify this, because I know you brought this up and you had the same sort of concerns. For me, it wasn't the size of the vestibule inside. It was what that woman is standing there, approaching that doorway. It looks like a storefront. It's not very inviting. That was our concern, was it not, Andrew?
Yeah, I've had concerns all along about the kind of scale and amenities associated with an entrance to a residential unit. And I mean, I can make a comment now about what's shown in front of us. I mean, I know there's an overhang, but it's 12 feet above the person.
Yeah.
And that's not the kind of overhang you really want at an entrance. You want an overhang that gives you a feeling of protection. And I mean, I think that's a fairly anonymous graphic, given that it's going to be the home address of 20 or 25 people. I mean, it's impersonal. It just doesn't look like a lot of work has been spent on it right up to this point to give it a sense of a residential address. And I have some of the same comments about the entrance on the other end as well.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, we've addressed this one. Can we also view the other entrance now?
Sure.
Oh. Yeah.
Can you come down on that, Nicholas? We've always seen the south entrance as being the primary entrance.
Oh. The other
Yeah.
entrance was the primary entrance?
Yeah. we've
Oh,
always
okay,
seen-
my mistake. I thought this was going to be, okay, thank you.
No. This entrance has the elevator in it, but the elevator is intended to basically bring people from the underground parking, which will be where the residential parking will be located. So it's not really intended as being the primary entrance. The sort of signed entrance, if you will be in the south end. But I think that as I hear your comments, I think there is the opportunity there to create more of a canopy and entrance statement there by bringing down. Maybe we can go back around, Nicholas, and I'll try to sort of describe what I'm thinking.
And while we're doing that, Carson, may I ask you, so if I'm a visitor to come to see, to meet somebody in this, I would be coming to the south entry. That's where I would bring the buzzer or whatever.
That's right.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. I just wanted to clarify that.
There still will be a buzzer, on this side, but for somebody who comes from this side, but the intention is that the south entrance is the primary one.
So there is a little bit of ambiguity there where we go. Yes,
Or
okay.
redundancy, if you will.
Okay.
So if we can go around to the south entrance. So what I'm thinking is that maybe we bring the sun around as well. What I'm thinking is that we can bring a canopy down from the underside, from the soffit of the canopy above. And it could be sort of a box canopy that can come down to the line of the yellow line there on the side. And it can be articulated in a wood cladding. And on that wood cladding, we can have the street address. And so, Nicholas, can you point to where that sort of box canopy would come in?
Because on the original proposal, the canopy levels were quite different. The canopy
Yeah.
level at the balcony is considered, the fascia is considered to be higher than the fascia over the entrance, but because you've kept them all in the same line, I think that's what's drawn it up quite a bit. So maybe back to closer to what you had originally.
Yeah, but
Okay.
I think that this could well be improved by creating an additional sort of box canopy coming down from the soffit above. It's a small detail, but I think it's an important detail.
Okay, so thank you. I just wanted to clarify that. So that was my one question based on my concern there. Thank you. I think that's all the questions I have.
Okay, so I'm having trouble distinguishing between my questions and comments. My main questions have to do with the topic we've already discussed, which is we're talking about this project, but it's really inseparable from the project next door. And it seems to me there are great risks involved with coordinating these two projects. I still don't know where the ramp would come down into the underground parking, it seems to me it has a tremendous risk of really compromising the integrity of the town square to have underground access coming down through it or near it or on one side of it. So I remain concerned about that. I realize probably this isn't the time to get any clear answers about it. Walter, you wanted to say something else?
Yeah, back to the entrance, while we were on the topic of the entry. The scale of the interior of the store has certainly affected the accessibility of the units above it. And really what's happened now is that you're almost going up 2 stories of stairs to get to the residential units. And trying to haul a couch up there would be quite a challenge, and I'm not about to do it. Just saying, I really strongly suggest that that you would have a separate elevator, separate entry. I'm also thinking in terms that the secondary entry to the residential units is the one that's going to be used to move residents into to their units. Also, for people that have accessibility issues, that second entry would also be all right, sorry about that. The second entry would be used for visitors that have accessibility issues. And so that would be, could be a primary entrance for people that need accessibility. And in our demographic, it would be highly advisable to consider that. So that's just comment, and it's not really a question, but it's all to do around that whole design, the entry.
Okay, thank you. So now I guess we can go on to comments, specific comments about what's being presented to us today. And I see there's an overlap here. We've asked some questions, but there is an overlap. So Walter, do you want to make specific comments now? You just made one about the entry, and I heard you making a comment about the need for a second elevator.
The application as it stands before it, I just really, before it says a rezoning, I understand, I support it. I just really appreciate the work that both Naked Naturals and Karsten have done. I think we're really working towards a beautiful project. However, I'm very concerned about risk. The risk that the town is going to be undertaking, the risk that the applicant is going to be taking on. And as it sits right now, and the development permit, the application, I can't support it as it sits right now. And so, and I would suggest that through the process, and there is a process for the applicant if he's willing, and it's spelled out in the Board of Variance terms of reference for both the Advisory Planning Commission. And I think we should really seriously consider taking that process into this development, and it's an opportunity, because what happened in our previous meeting, there were a number of recommendations by the commission. And there were some subject twos even built into it. And I think we're getting there, but we're not there yet. So what I would suggest to the commission as well as to the applicant is that we actually adjourn this meeting and reconvene. And this is at the developer's own, if he's in agreement to it, there's a process within the town's process, bylaw number 580.54, item number 16, 17, and 18, where if the developer is agreeable, it states, developer may resubmit plans to the advisory planning commission to address the recommendations made by the advisory planning commission at the previous meeting. And what it does is let's try to short circuit this thing, because I'm not going to support it, quite frankly, the way it is. But I really see a huge opportunity here, or again, the town, Falcon Beach, its urban planner, and Naked Naturals to do something so we can get it right. The way it sits right now, it's not right. It's not going to work. I can't support it going forward. But I think there's a really, really good opportunity for making it work, but it takes a little bit more. I think we have to work a little harder at getting it right.
Walter, can you specifically say what you think it is that does not work? So we all are clear about that.
The urban planning around the site and the project itself, they don't marry to each other right now. And we have to look at it as an advisory planning commission, and the works and services to this site are going to be they are going to be addressed. They're not addressed.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments you'd like to make?
No, that's it for me.
Okay, Maureen?
I regarding sort of this whole, unified landscape and that, what you're saying that, is very valid. However, I'm going to trust that the planners and the powers that be in Qualicum and working with the developer will come up with a satisfactory resolution that will make this work. I'm going to put my faith in that. I'm going to just address the direct concerns of the building and the design itself.
Okay.
I really appreciate the effort that's been made. I think quite a few of the things have been addressed. But my concerns still are the residents. There's this ambiguity over the entrance. I think we've addressed the physical lack of sense of cover and maybe architectural detail that makes it more inviting. I think that we've all agreed there's some options to work with there. Keep it looking less like a storefront and a little bit more inviting. But we still have ended up with this conflict between the use of the restaurant and the residences. So yeah, I'm just not quite sitting comfortably with the conflict there. And I appreciate that it would have been nice to have more units. I appreciate the fact why we don't, and that's fine. And so yeah, that's one big comment is the residential use versus the restaurant use, the entry, sense of entry, etc. And then the last little thing, and I think this is also being put out there, is the materials. The project's come a long way. It's got a lot of positive elements. However, in my experience, I've quite often found projects presented like this don't get built to look quite as nicely as they're presented. I really have concerns over the steel or the silver canopy, which I think is an element that's pretending not to be there, but it really is there. So I very much like the idea of exploring colors for that to maybe make a little bit of a stronger element. So I would, you've given us the option to maybe see what that would be like. I'd like to see that if possible, because I think just some play of materials or colors would help just bring some of these elements all together. That's my comments.
Okay, thank you, Maureen. I have some comments. First of all, one of my main concern as well is the other half of the project. It's really hard to understand how this is going to work without knowing what is the other half of the project, what is that town square, how do you get down under it and into this building? We're really only being presented with half of a project from the town's point of view. And so our hands are kind of tied. That being said, I realize there's a lot of what I call maturation, which has gone on around the form and image of this project since last time. Particularly, I think, around the issue of the unifying overhang and the added ceiling height below. I think these are good things. I'm not sure at all about the color of the overhang. I don't think it should look industrial. I think it should maybe look darker. I've already said that I feel like the entrance to the south entrance to the residential units is almost invisible. It doesn't have any presence the way it's shown. And it will be their primary street address, regardless of where you think you've put the elevator. This is their primary street address. It's a symbolic continuation of the residences coming down Memorial Drive. And here we are at the residences above the store. But there's nothing made of this entrance. There's no amenity to it. There's no protection. There's no sheltering image. In fact, the raising the roof in the store, the ceiling in the store, and raising the canopy around the building has unfortunately raised any sense of protection right off this entrance. Maybe more important than that, as I understand this building better, I simply cannot feel comfortable with there being no elevator at this end of the residence corridor. You're basically saying whoever lives here who absolutely needs an elevator, they somehow have to find their way around to where? Somewhere in the middle of the site where there happens to be an elevator that happens to connect to the parking. This is not it's not a nice arrangement from my point of view. It feels like I'm not going to come to this entrance at the south end and climb up essentially 2 flights of stairs. And we've got the oldest population in Canada per capita, they tell us. I'm not going to come here and climb up 2 flights of stairs. It's not going to happen. And this is a major oversight. We need an elevator at this end of the building. People are going to live here. Maybe 30 people are going to live here. We need an elevator. And so I have an ongoing concern about the relationship. I understand that it's not feasible to add more residential units. It's unfortunate none of the residential units look at Mount Arrowsmith, which is one of the things we thought was best about the site. But I understand that it may be not feasible to do that financially, but I remain really concerned about what looks like an uncomfortable interface between the residential street on the second level and this public gathering space and restaurant right across the other side of the corridor. And it doesn't feel comfortable. It feels like the kitchen is accessed right off this corridor. I just don't understand this. And this brings me to the other end of the corridor where the existing elevator is. I think there's some really serious problems going on here in terms of what you see when you get off the elevator, how you have to turn when you get off the elevator. If you're a resident, you're being put through this kind of strange traffic pattern. I don't know quite why there isn't more of a lobby at the top of that. I mean, people come to these restaurants and they're waiting there And it doesn't look like there's enough room for all this to happen. It just doesn't feel comfortable for me. And going down the elevator to the entrance at the plaza level, it doesn't feel like an entrance at all. It feels like there's nothing to define it as an entrance except the words restaurant written on the side of the building, which doesn't cut it with me, I'm afraid. Okay, can we go down the memorial facade? Can we turn the drawing a bit? Because there's something I really think is really interesting. Can we? Yeah. Okay, now we've got 3 bays, and I appreciate the work that's been done on the north one and the south one. We do have roof overhangs, both facing Memorial and on the downside of the gables. But when I come to the gable in the middle, which by its color and its signage is the prominent one, it's the building sign, really. Some of these important features are missing. There's no roof overhang. And this is to me, this is the gable where there should be a roof overhang. The roof doesn't come down as an overhang on the north or south sides either. To me, it looks like, well, there wasn't enough left over to finish that roof properly. It looks like a real lost opportunity to me. That is the element of this facade, and it's beautifully broken up. I really appreciate the sensitivity and the scale of this. It's beautifully broken up, and it's not articulated, I think, as carefully as it could be. You could get a lot more bang out of that middle gable than we're getting. It's really come a long, long way, but I think it could go further. And I have one question I should have asked earlier, I'm sorry. I'm assuming all the mechanical equipment on the roof, all the extractor units and so on, are underneath the solar collectors on the west side of the building. Is that right?
As many of them as are shown to be feasible, but we do recognize that there will be probably some units out on the flat roof. But
okay.
Primarily, we want to get them under the gable.
One other comment, there is one residential unit overlooking the loading bay for the semi-trailers where there's no outdoor space.
Yes.
And I think this is extremely unfortunate. Just because there's a loading bay there, I don't see why we can't put a balcony there. It just makes life more interesting. Maybe there's other things I don't know about, but it looks like that's going to be a tough sell, I think.
Can we go around and have a look at that, Nicholas, please? Okay, can we go down? So basically our concern there is if we put a balcony there, and we have considered that. Can you point right to the corner there, Nicholas? No, the left corner. Yeah. If we put a balcony under that left window there, or under the 2 left windows, we're going to have to blank out some of the special event windows there. Can you point to the special event windows? Yeah, we're going to have to blank out some of those to maintain privacy. Now, maybe that's not such a big deal. There is the possibility of putting a balcony in there. It won't go the full width there. But we could do that, but we didn't do it, not for structural reasons, although the structural engineers will probably complain, but they can deal with that. They're big boys and girls. But we didn't put it there for structural reasons. We just put it there. We want to make sure that we've got enough headroom for the trucks to be backing in. I think that we do. I think that we could introduce a balcony there, leaving enough headroom.
I'd like to suggest that the balcony for the residents could easily be accommodated by taking out one of those glazing panels. There's a lot of glass in that multi-purpose room.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
there's room to do it there.
Yeah, I don't think that's the big problem, and maybe there isn't any big problem here. maybe, I think we can probably look at figuring out how to do that.
I think that would be nice.
But the balcony will be right over the, right over the loading area. So
Well,
is that attractive? I don't know.
the trucks aren't there all the time. It also looks right at Mount Arrowsmith. So, there's some good things and some bad things some of the time, but I think it's something we just shouldn't pass up the opportunity to do if we can. Okay, those are my comments. I mean, I appreciate the sensitivity and the care that's gone into this project. I'm afraid there's still some big concerns about things though. So that's the end of our comments, I guess. So do we want to make another resolution? Does anyone want to make put forward a proposal for a resolution or a recommendation at this point?
I have one more thing, actually, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
It's something that was brought up by the mayor when the council was reviewing this. He asked us to do a number of studies of deliveries. And we have done 3 studies of deliveries. There's the potential for others, but I think we've covered the main 3. And if it's okay, I'd like to show those because I think it would be good to have the APC comment about those as well.
Fair enough.
If you're inclined to do so.
Go ahead.
So Nicholas. Okay, so the first one is what we have. And basically, the trucks come in off of Memorial onto 4th Avenue, and they drive straight ahead, and then they back up into the loading bay, and there's 2 loading bays there. And when they come out, they drive straight out and go back onto 4th and onto Memorial. And the intersection at 4th and Memorial is a generous one. So there's no additional provisions having to be made for that. That we felt we did actually quite early on in this design process look at quite a number of other possibilities, but in the end we thought that this was the most appropriate one. We got some feedback from the neighbors along Memorial Avenue, and some of them suggested turning the access and creating a large concrete block wall on 4th Avenue. So that's the second one. We'll go to B now. Let me just go through the advantages to this, to A first of all. I'll just read the advantages off. So the advantages of A are there's no interference with the town underground parking access. There's no interference with the residual town property. So for instance, we don't go beyond, that line you see on the left. All access is off of 4th Avenue, and there's no interference with Naked Naturals parking. So B, I'll try to do this quickly. So B shows the concrete block wall, and it shows a, now it would require a redesign of the building down here, because now you're backing right into the entrance to the residential. So we'd have to redesign that portion of it. But basically, okay, here the trucks come off of Memorial. They go well past that vertical line previously, and then they start backing up, and they back up in sort of a, they do a little bit of a difficult backup there. And in backing up, they basically wipe out some of the parking. And then when they come out again, they come out the same way, and they probably just go right up there to Fern Avenue and come out Fern Avenue. There is another possibility, which is that they come out the same way go up we don't know, but go up that driveway there and then back down and back into that space and then go out to Memorial Avenue again. So the comments about this are, yes, we have the high concrete block wall at 4th Avenue. There's no interference with the town underground parking access. No, the access extends to the residual town property and therefore eats up some of that property. The exit is off of, the obvious exit is off of Fern Road. And there is some interference with Naked Naturals parking, probably a loss of, I say 3 to 4, but really realistically it's probably more like 4 to 6 or 4 to 7, 4 to 8 units there. So that's B. And then C. So in C, we've still got the concrete block wall. We come off of 4th Avenue. We go into the driveway, which we are assuming on the residual town property. And then we back in off of that. It's pretty disastrous to the Naked Naturals parking. There's a loss of 11 to 12 spaces there. There's probable interference with the town underground parking access. We're kind of assuming that internally, we're assuming the access is somewhere along that line that Nicholas just drew, but that may not be what the town designer comes back with. Another issue with this one is exit off of Fern Road, which is something that the town engineer has said he definitely does not want to see. And so that's C. So we could also go to D and say, well, how about loading off of Memorial Avenue? But the town has already said, forget about that. We're not going to allow you to do that. And we could go to E and say, well, how about loading off of Fern Road? And the town quite clearly does not want that, especially because it would interfere with the underground parking, but also it would interfere with the town square. So we didn't even do D and E. So there we have it, A, B, and C. And at the end of that study, I guess my personal belief is that A is the best way to go. Clearly, like.
Can I ask Karsten, excuse me, so B and C were strictly to accommodate a concrete block wall?
Basically, like the B and C were there because the council, the mayor, or the former mayor, Tunis Westbrook, asked us to study alternative ways of delivering. So we've done that, and we're presenting it to you. And I guess if you were so inclined to do so, we would, like some sort of comments on that in your conclusions to council.
Walter?
Karsten, I like what you did in the first go around, and just for the driver, the operator of that large vehicle, just to simply back in. It's the shortest distance. You're going to, it's the least, you'll hear it the least, because the backup lights or the backup sounds that are going to happen. So you're going to have that reduced. If you do it any other way, you're just adding to first of all, that sound. And secondly, I think the interference of what's going to be happening in that parking lot. And again, brought something up again on, we really don't know how that parking lot is work, simply because of the entrance to the underground parking. I like what you did before.
I'd like to make some comments, please. It's interesting at this point to see these alternative possibilities for large vehicle movement shown on the drawing. It really brings some new thoughts to my mind. And the thoughts are, why are we doing it this way? We've got this project is about a grocery store and residential units And the project comes with some parking requirements. Now the project, there is parking provided on the site of the grocery store on the surface. But the parking underneath the grocery store can only be provided if someone else provides the access to that parking. And I suggest we may have got this all wrong. I'm going to sound a little bit brutal, but maybe the thing to say is, if you want parking underneath your store, you've got to provide the access to it. And if we want to add more underground parking next to your underground parking later, we'll be glad your access is already there. But my comment is, if we stand back, as Carson is doing, and start rethinking some of the traffic movement, is it possible to rethink it and put the access to the underground parking on this site now? So that we're getting this terrible anxiety lifted off this project and the next project. We're going to say we're going to build the grocery store, the surface parking, the truck access, and the access to the underground parking under the store now as part of this project. And when the town can add the civic square and the underground parking at the north end, you punch through the wall and you've got the access to the underground parking already in place. And just as an added benefit, you're not going to run into this horrible problem of how do you compromise the urban design integrity of the town square by having a long access to an underground parking facility across it. Why don't we just build it now as part of this project?
I'd like to make a comment to that, or a number of comments. We've struggled with this, not struggled, but we've studied this site now for some months. And we went through the exercise with the advisory group before that. I think that to provide the underground parking access on site would require an increase in the site area. And I'm not really sure that the town would be very interested in doing that. Nor, well, I won't try to speak for my client, and maybe Chris would like to add something to these comments on that. Chris? Extra area?
The underground parking was something that was originally a definite no-go. The cost associated with the underground simply just doesn't justify itself. When you look at the surface parking, I think Carson had estimated between 30 and 40% of the parking is removed in order to put an on-ramp to go down to the underground parking, which made the underground parking, which is ultimately much less preferable for people like customer base, just made it a no-go. So originally the plan was to make a 12 to 15,000 square foot base level. This was extended up to, I believe it's 17.7 right now, due to having the underground parking. But without that underground parking with an agreement with the city, the underground parking wouldn't exist, which is something the city really wanted. And the building size would just be smaller. So this accommodated a larger second story. It's accommodated a larger first story. But to do underground, which is less preferable at an expense of surface parking, it'd be better to shrink the development and just go pure surface.
What is to stop? What is to stop where the truck is shown on the drawing? The semi-trailer shown on the drawing. Go to the right of that. What is to stop that wall being moved to the east 10 feet and an underground parking ramp being built down there? What's to stop that? And entering from 4th Avenue into all the underground parking.
It's an interesting idea. It does cut into it. It sort of wipes out quite a bit of the storage that we had planned for the store at the lower level.
But you just said the store got 2,000 feet bigger.
Mm-hmm.
So why not take some of that back and say the underground parking access has got to go in there somewhere. It strikes me as very rational from a traffic movement point of view, keeps the traffic away from Fern Road and Memorial intersection, doesn't screw up the town square site with ugly underground access ramp, makes the project doable right now rather than in a very, very questionable second part. Why not just tuck another ramp going through? You've already got the semi-trailers going in. Why not just have a ramp going down into the underground parking?
It's an interesting idea, and I can see how it could work.
Yeah,
From a design point of view, I'm having some trouble understanding how it might work from a liability point of view if Naked Naturals is then providing access to the town underground parking. I'm not really sure about that. You know,
I'll jump in there and just add that I don't think that would be on the table for discussion, you know, driving through Naked Naturals to get to public underground parking, because I think there's a reasonable expectation for, you know, some protection of the private parking under the store for residents or, you know, things like that. So that's not to say the town, so exploring this idea, if the town did want to develop underground parking later, I think there would have to be a separate ramp down.
Currently, we're going through public parking. Currently, we're going through public. The way this is ultimately going to work out, assuming that the northeast site is going to be available for access to the underground parking, the public or the residents are going to be going through a public parking space to get into a secure underground parking for their own for the residents' use. So it's you know, like it's a vice versa thing, you know, like it's Maureen, go ahead.
Sorry, but we were asked to comment on the delivery and I haven't had my bit, so I'm going back.
okay, Maureen, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, obviously, delivery study A and I can't remember if it was Andrew or Walter brought up a really good point, because I hate the sound of that backup beeper. And so the least backing up, the best, because that's going to be the least disruptive to the neighborhood. And I think delivery study A is by far superior. My only comment is can we not put up a solid fence with some planting on the south side of 4th Avenue if there's a need or the residents feel there's a need for you know, a screen to help buffer the deliveries.
if I can comment on that, the neighbors have expressed concern about sound. And I think a buffer on the south side wouldn't work from the point of view of buffering the sound.
Not at all. It wouldn't reduce it somewhat if it was a solid, you know, like the stuff we have on the highways, the solid fence with maybe some
Yeah, the problem is it's too far away from the source of the sound, which in this case is both the motors and the wheels.
Okay.
And I think both Andrew and Walter have experience in this and may want to add to those comments.
I'd like to make one comment, and I actually heard it from the council meeting itself. This particular site was quite a busy site. It got 50 school buses going in and out of it for years and years and years. And not that it's an excuse, but the residents in the area are aware of this site having the possibility of have had that happen in the past, and there is a history of it. And we are going to do what's being proposed here by Naked Naturals, and it's probably even better than what was there before. You know, so 5 years ago, it's full buses going in and out of there all the time. So.
Okay, Maureen, do you have further comments?
No, I just wanted to put in my 2 cents regarding the,
Okay.
as I say, apparently council is asking for our feedback on that. So That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Yeah, Andrew?
Walter,
Yeah, Andrew, I would, at the last APC meeting, I was trying to allude to that as well, so where the entrance coming off of 4th Street, and I thought, well, that may work, and discussion on the ramp did come up. And Carson explained why that it wasn't put there. I since looked at it again because we've got another side to this whole site that we can also, there's consideration for a ramp. Now, I'm curious about the town ramp off the lane now because it's been brought up a couple of times. I'm also curious about whether or not, you know, can the applicant look at this a little bit differently? Even where the cafe patio is, a ramp from the lane on the west side and come underneath the cafe patio and just have their own entry. Keep this project entirely on its own. So later on when and Luke alluded to this as well. What's going to happen once this building gets constructed? We're going to have a shortage of 70 parking stalls while this is being built. How's the town going to manage that? Keep projects, you know, plan for what's around it, but keep the projects on its own merit as much as possible.
Okay.
okay, any other, go ahead.
As much as this is going, and I love the discussion because I really think this is a really good project for the community. But we are an advisory planning commission. This is not meant to be a charrette. However, I do like some of the things that we're bringing up, and I think it's a point of order on what our responsibility really is in terms of how we see this project and whether we should recommend it to council or should we look at it differently, as I suggested earlier on, and just reconvene after the applicant has looked at it, after these comments from us, met with the town one more time. And if the applicant is agreeable to it, and if the town is agreeable to it, bring it before us. We can make a recommendation to council, and we might be able to short circuit some of the delivery on this project.
Walter, are you prepared to make a motion at this point?
Yes, I am.
Okay, could we hear how it might sound?
Yeah. Last time was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
What I would I'd like to make a resolution to this on this project, whereby we adjourn this meeting and we reconvene at an appropriate time, allowing the applicant to come back to us if he is agreeable to prepare some alternatives and better works and services program for this particular site. Because right now, we didn't quite hit the mark for our previous.
I think we could maybe tidy up a movement and go back to, I'm just looking at what we moved at the last meeting. Where basically we supported the development, and then there were A, B, C, D, E, F, and the F was that we look at it again. So we supported it. However, I think B, we're not quite comfortable with. Town creates a process for successful joint planning, design, coordination, construction and operations of the Naked Naturals project, Town Square project, and underground parking project. I think we can say that we feel that B, that has not been fully addressed to our level of comfort. And then D, that revisit the interior residential design and conflict with restaurant and kitchen. And then we can throw in that the architectural element about the scale and design of entrances. Does that sound Rather than, it sounds like we're kind of going back on everything here. I think we have to take our last movements and say, okay, this is being dealt with, this is good, and this is not being dealt with.
Yes,
We're not comfortable
yeah.
with it yet. Does that make sense?
So are you saying, Maureen, that there are 3 things remaining?
Yeah, B, definitely. The town create, that's that whole joint planning. I think that addresses the underground project, parking and the access to that. That seems to, you and Walter in particular have really raised some concerns about that. So that is not being addressed to our satisfaction. And then it's D, revisit interior residential design in conflict with restaurant and kitchen. That I think we're still a little concerned with, but we're also concerned with, it would be C 4, revisit scale and design of entrance for residential zone to include an elevator at each end, the revisit, scale and design of entrances and to include an elevator at each end. But I'm saying partly, I think that addressing the scale and design of the entrance can be part of because it also falls in with the conflict of the restaurant design with.
Well, I'm going to suggest that we split this up into 3.
Okay.
Into 3 motions. If we could deal with the last one you referred to now, I think we can we move that the architect revisit the scale and design of the residential component to include more amenable entrances and elevators at both ends. Can we say that as number 1?
Do we have to dictate elevators at both ends? Maybe we just need to get a better flow. Maybe
Okay.
maybe
How would you like to word it?
maybe the entrances are combined in a different location. But I think rather than trying to dictate exactly what has to happen,
Yes,
more
okay.
address the whole flow, address the scale and design of the entrances and the flow into the residential space, and then that also comes into play, in coordination with the restaurant.
Okay, so your motion would be that the architect reconsiders the scale and design of the entrances and the flow into the residential component.
Yes, and we could say relative to the restaurant space, or however that would be worded.
So I'll just say that again, as I understand. I think when we get to this point, the wording appears to be very important. The committee recommends that the architect addresses the scale and design of the entrances and the flow to the residential component and the flow relative to the restaurant, the flow into the residential component relative to the restaurant space.
Yeah, that's definitely along the lines I was thinking. Yeah.
Okay, so that would be number 1. So the second motion would be, what would the second one be now?
To readdress B, which is that the town creates a process for successful joint planning, design, coordination, construction, and operations of the project, town square project, and underground parking project. I think B in itself it sounds like it hasn't been properly addressed to your satisfaction.
Yeah, so what would we say that the advisory planning commission moves that the town address the process to ensure
Yeah.
the
To
success
ensure-
of a joint planning
To ensure successful joint planning,
yes, to ensure successful joint planning.
comma, design coordination, comma, construction and operations. And then it's referred to the Naked Natural project, the Town Square project, and underground parking project.
Bernadette, is it Bernadette who's there? Or who's writing this down?
Yes, I'm here.
Right,
Are
does
you
that all
having
make
trouble
sense?
getting this?
No, I got it.
Okay,
I
good.
just didn't know who the mover and the seconder was for it.
Oh, we
And
were,
num-
we were trying to create the motion.
Okay. So you have two motions, if I'm correct.
We're going to have a third, right, Maureen? What
Oh,
was number
are they separate motions, or do we say that we support it subject to the following?
Yes, oh, yes, that's right. There'll be one motion that we are generally in support of the project, subject to the following. Okay, so we've got number one, address the scale and design of entrances to residential units. Number two, the town addresses a joint planning process to successfully plan, coordinate, design, construction, and so on. Right? Did we have a number three?
No, we combined the two.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
How about the delivery? Would you,
So if I can interject, so we're really going back to council with the same recommendations. Bottom line.
Not all of them, but most, there's two main ones.
Which they're the deal breakers, are they not? Oh, they are for me anyways.
Yeah, I'm afraid they are for me too, Walter. I just can't see, I can see tremendous risks involved with this without clarification of these two pieces.
Yeah. So if we're going to make the same recommendations to council, and we're also going to recommend that council comes back and then the applicant, and then this be reviewed by us again, we're just going full circle. So why?
What would you suggest?
I would suggest as what I brought up earlier on, and go according to the follow the guidelines that are prepared and the recommendations that are prepared for the town bylaw number 580 for the Advisory Planning Commission, 580.54, page 9 of 9. Okay, and 9 of 9, and I'll just read it out. And it deals with all of these things so that we don't have to, the council doesn't have to hear the same recommendation. But let's get this straight. I'm just putting it out to the town as well to the applicant. Work this thing out. And we'll reconvene and listen to it. And then we'll make a recommendation to council. Because if the developer is agreeable, and this is what I'm reading, point 17, and it says if the developer is agreeable to the process, the developer may resubmit plans to the Advisory Planning Commission to address the recommendations made by the Advisory Planning Commission at a previous meeting. And we've already had one meeting about this, and now we've got the same points that we're bringing up. So I'm suggesting, but possibly that the applicant work it out with the city, come back to us in a month and tell us what you've done. And then we can just go back to council, make the recommendation to proceed.
Well,
With
Walter,
our
it
recommendations at the time.
sounds like what you're saying is, from your point of view, the appropriate thing for us to do as a committee would be to say, at the previous meeting, we expressed these concerns. They have not all been dealt with. Therefore, come back to us when they've been dealt with. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, as per the Advisory Planning Commission terms of reference, we can do that.
Well, Walter, sorry, let me jump in here. That language says that it's up to the developer. You know, if they choose to repeat and come back to the APC rather than going to council, then they can choose to do so. So the default process from here would be at the conclusion of today's meeting, the minutes would be put together. It would go back to council at the next meeting, which is November 17th, I believe it is. So it would go to that meeting. If if the developer did choose to take extra time and make these revisions, they could choose to do so. You know, it really wouldn't affect the timing of the APC consideration one way or the other. In other words, if you say, come straight back to us in a month, that's one thing. If it goes to council in 2 weeks and then comes back to you in a month, it's still coming back to you in a month. But they, you know, council also may be entirely happy with the current situation. So my thought as to the next steps from here is that council should probably determine the appropriate process rather than the APC.
I think from my point of view, I feel we have a responsibility to express our concern at this point. And I don't think we can, I mean, we support so much about this project, but I think there are some serious things that are unsupportable at this point. And I think it's incumbent on us to say, we're unable to go any further with this because we've expressed our concerns and they haven't been dealt with to our satisfaction. Some of them have, but not all of them.
Yeah.
What do you think, Maureen?
Yeah, exactly. There's been a good attempt at addressing some of our concerns, but there's two that are out, you know, still outstanding.
I think also it's incumbent on us to say exactly what Maureen just said. There's been a good attempt to address our concerns, but here are the two significant concerns that are still, we need to say what they are. So there's no ambiguity about it. We need to be clear in a motion. These remain our concerns.
Yeah, and that's why I brought up the wording that we used last time.
Yes. Yeah.
To pinpoint the, you know, we put it out there. It's on the movement, and yeah, that hence the wording I came up with.
Mr. Chair, if you're not satisfied with the wording, maybe I could throw out a suggestion. And that would be something to the effect of that the Advisory Planning Commission recognizes that major improvements have been made since the last version, but
Good.
remain concerned with the following items from the previous agenda that have not yet been addressed, and then list those.
That sounds right to me. That's what I'm
Yeah.
trying to say.
Yeah, so I think we can certainly tidy up that wording, and I think I'm hearing what you're saying. So if you're comfortable, you know, reiterating the fact that progress has been made, but you're not yet satisfied with these remaining items, then we can tidy up the wording, and that'll be clearly communicated to council.
Yeah.
Okay. That
Are you
sounds-
in favor of that, Walter?
Yeah, I really would like council to know that, first of all, we do want to see this project be successful, but there are so many inherent risks with it right now in terms of what we're seeing. I think it's a great project. I really do. It's got to be done in context of what's going on around it and in future planning, and we're not getting that. So I can't really support the application as it sits. And I'd like to be as positive as I possibly could be about it. But to be honest with you, when I saw this come back to me, I was pretty upset because it wasn't done. And then the changes that we requested was not done. So I can't accept what's presented before me because it's not going to work. Quite frankly, I see it.
So
And,
Walter, how do you feel about us saying as part of our motion, we support the project generally? When we don't, do we?
Yeah,
You don't support it.
I cannot
okay.
support
Think
this
this is
project in
important.
isolation of what's going on around it.
Yeah, and I feel, I'm sorry, because I mean, the project is coming along beautifully,
Yes,
but based on particularly the one topic, the underground parking, I can't support it. Based on experiences I've had on other projects, I can't support it. As it stands right now, we don't have enough information.
So can I jump in with another suggestion? So the motion that I had given to you earlier, that wouldn't say, that you support the project. It's just saying, you recognize the major improvements, but these remain outstanding. Okay, so I just want to be clear that that wouldn't put Walter in a position of voting on something that he's not quite ready to move forward on. And then my second point would be that if you'd like to follow up that motion with something that specifically addresses your concerns about the dependency on a town developed underground parking ramp, that would be an appropriate follow-up motion, but I don't think you need to tie it all together.
I agree with what you're saying, Luke. I forget the question you asked Luke. I'm getting a bit confused here with the language. I forget the question you asked Walter. You asked him what could he support, what wording?
Well, Walter was, if I understood him correctly, he was concerned that if the motion read something to the effect of that we support the project, but these concerns remain outstanding, Walter was saying, I don't think I can vote for that because I can't support the project until those have been addressed. So in other words, the wording that you may want to advance today is something to the effect of, we're happy with the changes that have been made, but the following remain unaddressed. And
I'm
then,
happy with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you happy with that, Walter? We're happy with the progress, that we recognize progress has been made, but the following remain unaddressed.
Yes,
Okay,
I'm pleased, I'm pleased with the design of the site improvements. But I don't like an exit to a dirt wall.
that would be a follow-up, Walter.
okay. So could we agree on that wording for the first motion?
I think we're getting closer.
That we recognize that progress has been made, but the following two items they still have not been addressed. That's our first motion, right?
Sounds good.
Can we vote on that?
Yeah.
All in favor?
Sorry, just to go back, do we know who made the motion and who seconded it, or do we have to do that yet? How does that work?
I'll
Andrew made
volunteer
it.
to make the motion.
Okay.
Who's seconding it? Is there a seconder?
I'll second it, sure. Yeah.
Okay, all in favor?
Great.
Okay,
But it'll pass.
okay. So now we're gonna have a second motion. And how would you suggest we phrase this, Luke, based on what you've heard?
Okay, so based on what I've heard, I mean, Walter's expressed more general concerns about the sites integrating, but a lot of it really hones in on the fact that the design depends on a parking ramp that would be developed by the town, and there's no specific plan before you today. So I think I would if I'm capturing that correctly, what I would say is, that the APC recognizes major risks in advancing a design that depends on the development of an underground parking ramp by the town at a later date. Just flag the risks. And if your suggestion, sorry, just to follow up, is if your suggestion is to consider an independent parking ramp, you could say that.
How about the APC recognizes that the success of this project as it stands would be dependent on the completion of a town project which provides access to underground parking. And this project cannot function without that project being completed. I'm not sure that's right either.
Yeah,
Well,
I
yeah,
think,
Yeah.
go ahead, Walter.
perhaps we can reword it that the
Yes, please.
APC does not recommend project reliant on an adjacent project by the town of Pelican Beach's design and planning and construction.
that's short and sweet. I think that's very clearly worded.
I think that's kind of where we're at. We like this project, but we can't recommend it when it's dependent on something we don't know anything about. So I like that it's so concise. I think that's where we're at. I think we're unable to support this project until we have specific information about access to the underground parking.
I think Walter's was short and sweet and covered the point. I wouldn't recommend adding more at this point.
And I'm glad you got it recorded because I can't remember what I said.
I can't either.
Um,
Did you write it down, Luke?
No, I just did it off the top of my head.
well, if my memory serves, it was that the APC does not recommend advancing with a project that depends on the development of a parking ramp by the town.
Yes, that's beautiful.
Okay, short and that's, did I
That's
say that?
short- That's short and sweet.
That's what I heard. That may have not have
Okay,
been what you
okay,
said,
Lou.
but that's what I heard.
I could support that one.
Okay.
So
I'll
could
make that
we-
motion.
So you're making that as a motion, Walter?
Yeah.
I second it.
Okay.
Any discussion? All in favor?
That's your baby. It's carried.
Well, there you go. This is hard, because
It,
there are so many good things, but this little piece is kind of like, it's tripping everything up.
Andrew, you have no idea how much I love this project, but
Yeah,
it's keeping me awake at night.
well, I couldn't
And,
figure out what to say.
It,
I
it
know.
really is, because I think what Kristen and Karsten have done is just remarkable with what they've got.
Yeah,
And it's really good. And if there's anything that we could do to help and support and make it happen, I'll be trumping this thing as much as I can, but it's got to work. And your and Maureen's comments particularly were really good on design, and I just really appreciate it. But there's a process here that's not working for me. That's
Yeah, fair enough.
that's the crux of it, really. It bugs me. I hate to say it, but that's just the way. And Carson, you know what I'm all about anyway. So.
so Luke, does this give you enough to go on?
Yep, I think we have it fully recorded. So
Okay,
if you have more to add, great,
no,
go for it. If not, you can make a motion to adjourn and we
I
will.
make a motion to adjourn.
I second it.
Okay, concurrence has
Okay.
happened.
Sorry, it's so torturous, but I think
No,
we
it's
get the
worth
heart of it.
it's our town, Andrew. We'll make it happen.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Take
thank
care.
you.
All right, take care, you
Okay.
guys.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
bye.